Hey guys, and welcome to Gwent. My name is Jaggerus, and today I want to talk to you about the weather changes coming with open beta. And specifically, I've made a deck with all of the cards I want to talk to you guys about here. Now, basically in Gwent, previously weather could be applied, you could apply frost to the front row, you could apply fog to the middle row, and you could apply rain to the back row. And all those cards still exist. We have frost, fog, and rain. And what they would do is they would cripple any unit that wasn't resistant on that row down to 1 strength. So it was a very high power swing card. Having weather, you know, swung their power really low, and removing weather would bring the power back up. And there was kind of this balance issue where they couldn't really balance weather properly because either weather was hard to remove and just kind of ran rampant, or weather was easy to remove so nobody played it. And with these changes, they're hoping to kind of get around that. So we've got some changes to weather now. Basically, as you can see here, we have biting frost. Apply frost to a row, and this is only to your enemy's row. So you apply frost and it only hits your enemy. Frost at the start of the turn, so the card's ability triggers at the start of its current owner's turn, damage units on the row by 1. So now you can apply frost to any row. You can have frost front row, frost middle row, or frost back row, and frost will deal damage to units on the row by 1. And when it says units, this means non-gold units. They've taken out any kind of qualifiers that say, you know, not gold. Basically, unless it says so, it doesn't affect gold. That's kind of one of the features in the patch. Then we have fog. Fog, the effect is that it damages the highest unit on the row by 2. So this is used to whittle away strong units. So this biting frost seems to be good against, you know, like a stacked row, whereas impenetrable fog seems to be good against a row with lots of strong units, or a row, yeah, with very similarly strength units, or one where there's one very high unit you want to whittle down, for example. Basically, this is removing 2 strength from the strongest unit. Meanwhile, torrential rain works the opposite way. This one damages the lowest unit. So if someone has stacked a lot of weak units, but they're protecting it, say, from an Igni or a Scorch with a strong unit, you can still take out those units with rain. So rain does that. And you might be thinking, well, you know, the fact that you can play these on any row and that they still do a lot of damage, they still seem quite strong for bronze cards. And I agree with that. I do think they're relatively strong. But Clear Skies, I think they've kind of worked out more or less what you need to do with this. Because Clear Skies, you can see, you spawn Clear Skies or Rally. And Clear Skies, oh sorry, First Light. This card is called First Light. First Light and Clear Skies have the same picture, so it always throws me. Clear Skies, you trigger all weather on your side, and then you clear all weather from your side. So what that means is you trigger the weather effect, but then you remove it. So you'll take a little bit of damage. The weather effect will be triggered, but it will be removed, which means it won't damage you then consecutively. And alternatively, you can always rally to play a random bronze unit from your deck, as First Light has always worked. So you can, you know, remove all weather. The question is, like, how beneficial is weather then? Well, I think weather is still beneficial, because previously what would happen is people would, you know, leave the weather on the deck until right at the end of their turn when they would first light. Like, people would typically hold off on first lighting. But now there's an incentive to play first light quickly, because otherwise, you know, multiple turns will rack up and they'll get lots of value out of their weather. Whereas previously, as soon as weather was removed, it lost all value. Now weather can kind of maintain a little bit of value, if that makes sense. And the thing is, if they first light early and remove the frost, then they've used up their first light. So, you know, if you have more weather in your deck, which is likely in a weather deck, they have to kind of time when they want to use their first lights, because you might then play, you know, a fog and a frost, in which case they've no longer got first light to remove it, if that makes sense. So timing your first light is important. And now weather effects, they'll all trigger when you play first light. So you'll always get some value out of weather. It won't be like previously, where as soon as a player played first light, you lost all value that you had from your weather. So then we have cards like Skellige Storm. So Skellige Storm is silver weather. So we're not just limited to frost, fog, and rain now. Now we can also have the Skellige Storm applied. This turn start damage the units at the end of the row by 3, 2, and 1. And I feel like this is going to be useful against, you know, like consume strategies, for example, where the Ran Warrior is eating the units kind of from one end to the other. You can start to kind of whittle off the units from one side. The difficulty I have with this card is I don't know what the end of the row is, because obviously there's 2 ends. There's the right end and the left end. Does this mean on the far left? Does this mean on the far right? I'm not entirely sure. The wording here is a little bit unclear, but I think it's a bit more of a situational weather that could still prove useful depending on how the kind of meta sorts itself out. Then we have White Frost. White Frost, apply frost to a row on your opponent's side and the row above it. So frost, like you said, damages units by 1. So you can do the front and middle row or middle and back row. You can't do the front and back row. It's 2 kind of next to each other rows, adjacent rows, basically. And White Frost is an interesting card because it actually synergizes really nicely with Ice Giant, which is now a bronze card. You know, it's a bronze 5 strength monster. Because this card, boost self by 5, is Frost is anywhere on the board. Damage self by 5 when the last Frost is removed. So, if you can apply lots of Frosts before their Frosts are removed, you know, you gain more benefits with this Ice Giant. And White Frost, for example, puts 2 Frosts on the board, so that's already going to boost him by 10. And then if they do remove the Frost, you know, you still gain 5 from the Frosts. Like, it doesn't remove 10, it only removes 5, because you can kind of stack Frosts, if that makes sense. So this is a kind of interesting card in that it synergizes really nicely with White Frost, and then it also synergizes with, you know, Frost effects if you can get more than one of them out. Because if your opponent is kind of sitting and waiting, then they have the risk that your Ice Giant's going to get really strong. And that's something that they have to kind of think about when they play around Frost. Next up, we've got Aeromancy. Play a weather card from your deck or graveyard. Shuffle the others from your deck back. So Aeromancy is basically just targeted weather. You can pick out a weather and you can play it. And this is, it says weather card, so this includes silvers. So this isn't just Biting Frost, Impenetrable Fog, or Torrential Rain. You can also play, potentially, for example, Skellige Storm or White Frost. Whoops, where's it gone? I've just removed it. Oops-a-daisy. I was trying to show you the premium, and instead I just took it out of the deck. So yeah, so I think this is going to be an interesting card in weather decks. I mean, at the moment, I'm not sure, you know, how targeted you need your weather to be. It seems to me that a kind of generic weather deck is still going to be pretty decent. But I think this gives you the possibility to build decks that are very specifically centered around certain weathers, whether they be a frost deck or a fog deck or a rain deck or what have you. So if we go back to units, we've also got the Foglet. Foglet, summon or resurrect this unit whenever you apply fog to an opposing row. So this gets pulled onto your side when fog is applied, and destroy this unit when there's no fog on its row on your opponent's side. So it'll get drawn onto the row that you fog. So if you fog the front row, this will be played on your front row. If you fog the middle row, this will be played on your middle row. So that's something you have to be a little bit aware of, you know, that you're careful in how you stack your rows with the fog as well. But that's what Foglets do. Meanwhile, if we go to bronzes, we do also still have the ancient Foglets. I'm just going to get rid of this filter. Where are they? They're in here somewhere. Ancient Foglets. Come on, there's one. So these still exist. Turn start. Boost self by 1 if fog is anywhere on the board. And that doesn't get removed when you remove the fog. So basically, he doesn't have to be in fog anymore. There just has to be fog on the board. And I think the Ancient Foglet is in a really nice spot. This makes him, you know, a little bit happier than he was previously. Because previously, people would, like, move him out the fog and stuff. And they wouldn't really deal with the fog at all. They just moved the Foglet out of it. Now they have to deal with the fog in order to counter the Foglet. So that's pretty cool. Other cards that we haven't looked at here. I haven't actually put them all in here. Drowner. We've got the Drowner. So here is a Drowner. Drowner just moves a unit to its side, so it's the same. So you can use the Drowner to reposition units into weather. So if you've put weather on a specific row and some units aren't in it, you can still use the Drowner to move the unit into that water. And there's its premium effect you see there in all its glory. It's appropriately gross. That is a long sound effect. Meanwhile, we also have Water Hag. I'll find that one for you as well. I think Water Hag. Does Water Hag still exist? Oh, it's not a bronze card. Of course, it's not a bronze card. There we go. We also have Water Hag. Water Hag, deploy, spawn, clear skies, lacerate, or torrential rain. So Water Hag, 3 strength card played in the siege row, and you know, very interesting. I think. I'm gonna be just kind of playing with his corpse. So you've got the choice. You can use Clear Skies if it's necessary. Otherwise, you can rain someone. Alternatively, you can lacerate. And I think this is, again, a really nice silver card that's going to slot into lots of weather decks. And they don't feel so, I guess, so limiting anymore, which is what's important. So moving on to gold cards, I then want to touch on Woodland Spirit. Woodland Spirit, deploy, spawn 3 rabid wolves, and apply fog to the opposite row. So it does the same thing, but now you can choose the row, because obviously fog is no longer just in the middle row. So you can play it at the front row, the back row, or the middle row, and obviously this applies fog. So this doesn't summon fog, it just applies it. So this just sticks fog on a row. So this is like an extra fog in your deck. And notice the rabid wolves are still 1 strength and still go onto the thing row, but they now have a premium, which is cool. Oh, one card I forgot to mention, Wild Hunt Hound. So Wild Hunt Hound, I actually did mention in my new cards video, which has also gone up today. So if you haven't seen the new cards video, do check that one out. That goes over all the new cards in the open beta. But this is a 5 strength melee unit, which summons Biting Frost. So summon, as you can see here if I mouse over the card, plays a specific card from your deck. So this doesn't this isn't an extra frost. You have to have frost in your deck, but this is targeted draw for frost as well as being a wild hunt unit, so synergizing into kind of wild hunt strategies. But that's another kind of element that weather has now in monsters. And you may be asking, you know, what about Caranthea? Because obviously wild hunt hounds used to be summoned by Caranthea. Well, Caranthea is right here, and he is still a weather unit. Move 5 enemies to this unit's row on your opponent's side and apply frost to that row on that side only. So basically you move 5 enemies to the same row as Caranthea. You can play him in any row, and then you apply frost to that row on your opponent's side. So if you play him in the melee row, you can move units onto your opponent's melee row, and then you apply frost. And weather effects overwrite each other, so you can't frost, rain, and fog the same row. You know, that would be ridiculous. You have to apply different weather effects to different rows. So in this situation, you're better doing it in an empty row, basically, and not really moving units out of weather. So this is kind of a opening way of playing weather rather than a way of adding weather, because you can obviously move the units. So that's something to bear in mind as we continue to look at these cards. So now we're going to get to the kind of whammy cards that are weather. But very quickly, I'm just going to show you guys Dagon. Dagon, deploy Spawn, Biting Frost, Impenetrable Fog, or Torrential Rain. So you no longer get a First Light from Dagon. And I think this 100% was the right choice by CDPR, because the ability to have weather is enough. The fact that you could have weather but also use him to remove weather and to find a bronze unit meant that he really had no downsides. But he is now a 7 strength deployable unit as well, so you do get a weather from it. Not weather, sorry, a unit on the board, because all leaders are now playable. So we've got Drought and we have ROOG. So Drought is the new card. Again, I covered this in my new card video, which you can always check out. You apply Drought to all rows on your opponent's side. Drought, turn start, damage the lowest unit on the row by 3. So this is basically like hopped up Rain. Rain, damage the lowest unit on the row by 2. The opposite of Rain, Drought, apply to every single row, so all 3 rows, and damage the lowest unit by 3. And the point with this card, or with First Light, is that you're always going to get a little bit of value out of this, because First Light does trigger the weather effects when you play Clear Skies. So Clear Skies trigger a weather on your side. So you will get at least 9 points of damage out of Drought, assuming they have units on every row. And if they don't have units on every row, you know, then maybe you want to think about playing Drought. I wouldn't recommend playing Drought when they only have 1 unit out, but when they have maybe 2, you're always getting at least 6 value out of it at that point. So it's probably a worthwhile play. And if they can't remove it, you're getting a lot of value out. But that's kind of, I guess, the point of a gold card is, you know, if they're not counterable, then they're very strong. I'm a little bit worried about this. I think it's potentially too strong. I think the problem is that you have to counter it, otherwise you're basically scuppered. You have to have some way of clearing weather. Otherwise, you know, tough luck. But saying that, we do now have a mulligan on round 2 and on round 3, so that you do have a chance to find weather. And there may be other strategies that I haven't figured out yet in terms of countering weather with specific cards. Like, there are cards that reset points and stuff, so there's potentially ways around this. Also, you know, it only damages the lowest unit, but the thing is it damages the lowest unit by 3. And then once that unit dies, the next unit is the lowest unit. So it's kind of ridiculous because it hits all rows. So this is a card I'm a little bit worried about the balance of. Bear in mind, this is the PTR, so not all values are finalized yet. They could change by tomorrow, but this is one that I think, you know, CDPR need to be a little bit careful with, because it basically has the potential to kind of kill all your cards from the bottom up, basically. And similarly, we then have ROOG, which we can show you guys here. ROOG. Apply ROOG to all rows on your opponent's side. Turn start, damage the highest unit on the row by 3. So this is the opposite effect of Drought. So Drought is taking, you know, damage off the strongest unit. But the thing is, I feel like it's much easier to have one super buffed unit than it is to have, you know, one very weak unit. This is the kind of worry that I have is with Drought, you know, you often have a lot of like 4s and 5s, for example, on the board, 4s, 5s, and 6s, and this is going to start kind of eating them up very quickly. Whereas ROOG against one buff unit, if you have one unit that says, say, has 20 points and the rest have like 6, you know, you're only taking 3 damage per round. And I guess ways you can counter these are by, for example, only stacking 1 row. So rather than having your unit spread out across lots of rows, you only have 1 row stacked, which is typically what players do in Gwent. You know, you typically have 1 row that's a lot more stacked than the other ones. But I am just a little bit worried about these golden weather effects going into the open beta. But it remains to be seen. And this is why a lot of people have been saying that weather is OP. Now, the last card I quickly want to talk to you guys about is our good friend Gerald. Where is Gerald? Gerald AARD. Why is that not showing up? Gills. Do I not have it? Maybe I don't have it. I don't know. But I want to quickly talk about Gerald AARD because people will be wondering, you know, what is the situation with GERALT AARD. I call him Gerald to wind people up. So whoever's triggered, got you. I'm not funny, I know. But let's find AARD. There it is. For some reason it wasn't showing up, but AARD is an 8 strength neutral. Push 5 adjacent enemies to a row above and then damage them by 2. So AARD is used for repositioning units, which is going to be useful in weather, but you don't have to have weather out to gain benefit from this card. You know, you've got the push, and then they also get the damage. So I can see him being played in non-weather decks as well, for the simple point that, you know, he's worth up to 18 points of damage, basically, if they've got a stacked row. And then you can reposition that row onto a different row, and that can be beneficial for different strategies. So last card I quickly wanted to mention was AARD, and you can see him there pushing enemies away. Let me know what you guys think of the weather changes. Ultimately, I feel like the weather changes are the right decision, because it's not an all or nothing situation like it was previously, but I think they're going to be a little bit tricky to balance. One thing I would be really happy to see is positive weathers, so weathers that you play on yourself. So, for example, I don't know, sunny day or rainbow, where you play, you know, nice weathers and they somehow buff your units, for example. That would be really neat to see. So the option to play weather on yourself, and then your opponent can choose to remove your buffs, for example. Like, why does it always have to be debuffing your opponent? Why can't it be a positive? That's something that I would like to see in the future of Gwent. And all in all, I think it's something that Gwent needs. Like, I think weather in Gwent, they go in hand. Like, I don't think CDPR could really remove weather, so they need to figure out a way to make it work. And I think this is an interesting one. Another one you could maybe do is have it where weather applies in effect if it's lost for a certain number of turns. Maybe, you know, if there's weather for X number of turns, apply frostbite to the units and they take extra damage, for example. I don't know exactly how you would work it out, but there's options there. But let me know what you guys think about weather in the comments below. And if you found this video informative, maybe hit that thumbs up button, guys. You can always like the video. Beyond that, tomorrow is open beta, so plans for tomorrow, I will hopefully try and live stream at the very least my keg opening. It depends really what time the open beta launches. The earlier for me, the better, but I'll try and record that and I'll stream it, and then I'll put the VOD up on here the next day. That's basically just because of my Twitch partner settings. You have to give 24 hours between streaming and uploading it to like YouTube, for example. So we'll do that, and then I'll also try and get some beginner videos, so beginner deck guides up as soon as possible. We're going to refresh those for the open beta. There's been so many big changes, I don't think my beginner decks are up to date. And I'll also have a video series of me playing through the challenges. So the challenges are how you unlock new leaders in Gwent, so that'll be going up. And in terms of the next few days, yeah, I'm gonna try and concentrate on YouTube videos because I am away this weekend. So I'm going to try and get that done, but if I have time for streaming, there will be streaming too, which you can find at twitch.tv/Jaggerous. Beyond that, have a fantastic day. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!